because I don't know how to provide commentary, is this.
Podcast that's out now that I'm really excited about, and I know I'm the last now to talk to my agent.
Hello everyone, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct. I hope y'all are having a good week, good day. Hopefully staying inside if you can. Hopefully staying sane if you can. I know these times are very testing to everyone, but I hope y'all are hanging in there. I'm thinking about you guys and we will get through this together. So as you can tell by the title of today's episode, today we are talking about the Pamela Smart case. And while I myself briefly knew the overview of it before doing my research, I definitely did not know as much as we're going to be going through today. There have been multiple movies made off of this case, and it's been a very, very popular case in the media as well. Pamela Smart is a woman who was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, and accomplice to first-degree murder for the murder of her husband, Greg Smart, in the year 1990.
It's not
Regardless
sticking.
of her arrest, Pamela has still maintained her innocence after all these years. And I thought that this case was interesting for many reasons, but one of them being that we so often look into cases where men are the suspect and men are the murderers and the serial killers. And while statistics do show that is more likely the case, there still are women out there who are just as capable of committing horrific crimes as well, which is why I wanted to cover this case this week, and I'm really interested to hear your guys' opinions on it. So with that being said, let's just jump right on into it. So I feel like I always have to kind of give this a disclaimer before we get into this part of the episode, because I want to talk a little bit about Pamela's upbringing. And now this isn't really because I feel like there should be any sympathy towards her, but more so because I always like to know, how did we get here? What led this person to do the things that they did? What was their life path before all of this happened? So Pamela Smart was born on August 16th, 1967 to her parents John and Linda Wohas in Coral Gables, Florida. Pamela is one of 3 kids. She has a sister as well as a brother. Linda, Pamela's mother, was a homemaker, and she was described as a great mother. Whenever any of the kids ever needed anything, their mom was always there to be there for them. And while Pamela's mom stayed at home, her father was a pilot, so he was out traveling all the time, flying, but Pamela still had a great relationship with him regardless. And Pamela was described as a very happy-go-lucky, outgoing type of person. She was very popular, she had a lot of friends, and after living in Florida for a while with her family, Pamela and her family ended up packing up and moving to New Hampshire. Pamela spent a lot of her growing up years in New Hampshire. She went to high school in New Hampshire. When it came time for college, Pamela decided that she actually wanted to go back to Florida. So she ended up enrolling in Florida State University. Something about Pamela is that she was described as an overachiever. She worked 3 jobs while she was in college and graduated a year early with a degree in communications. And her dream job was to be a television and news reporter. Pamela worked for multiple different radio shows. She would be the DJ on them, she would play the songs, and she got the name Maiden of Metal. And this was because she loved metal music and she would play it all the time on her radio shows. She loved that type of music. That was like her scene. So now let's talk about Pamela's love life, because this was pretty non-existent in her life up until she met Greg Smart, who would become her husband. So Pamela, like I said, never really had more than one real relationship up until she met her husband, because she was so busy in college working 3 jobs and studying that she really never went out to socialize, and she never had that part of the college experience. But that all changed when she met Greg Smart. So Greg Smart was born on September 4th, 1965 in Nashua, New Hampshire. So he was just about 2 years older than Pamela was. And Pamela and Greg actually met when Pamela was home for Christmas break in 1986, and the two of them met at a New Year's Eve party, and they just completely hit it off right off the bat. One of the things they really were able to bond over and connected on was their similar taste in music. Greg also loved metal music. They liked the same bands, and Greg even looked the part of a rocker. He had, the stereotypical long shaggy hair. He had the rocker fashion sense. He fit the part really well, and Pamela loved it. Pamela said she loved Greg's personality and how outgoing he was and that he was just a fun person to be around. And that's what I've noticed when doing my research on Greg, is that people only had the nicest things to say about him. They said that he was super friendly, and Pamela's family was also a huge fan of Greg. They loved the two of them together, thought it was a great fit, and shortly after the two of them ended up dating, Greg actually moved back to Florida with Pamela so the two of them could be closer to each other. So it was safe to say that, their relationship was heating up pretty quickly. And then on May 7th, 1989, when Pamela was 21 years old and Greg was 23, the two of them ended up getting married. Once they got married, the two of them ended moving back to New Hampshire, and they moved into a town called Derry, New Hampshire, and they moved into the Summerhood condominiums. Pamela got a job as a media coordinator at the Winnicott High School in New Hampshire, and this really did seem like the perfect job for her for the time being and where they were at in their lives. Pamela really saw it as a stepping stone to where her dream goal was. And while Pamela was doing that, Greg got into the insurance business with his father. He worked a lot of night shifts. He was going to people's homes and would try to sell them on different insurance plans. And once this happened, real life really started to set in. They got married, they got the house, they got the real life jobs, and this reality hit Pamela pretty hard. Greg ended up cutting off his long hair, and while that might not seem like a huge deal to most people, that was actually a pretty big deal to Pamela. And this part, him cutting his hair, was very much played up in the movies that were based off of this case. And it wasn't necessarily the fact that he cut his hair, but it was more so symbolizing the fact that, Pamela wasn't dating this guy who looked like a rock star rebel anymore. She was married to a man who worked in insurance, and while that wouldn't be a problem for most people, it was portrayed that that was definitely a problem for Pamela. It was around this time that Pamela and Greg's marriage really hit a bump in the road. And Pamela has come forward and said that around this time, within the first year of their marriage, Greg confessed to Pamela that he had had an affair. Pamela said she was absolutely devastated and crushed when he told her this, and she kind of felt like it was something wrong with her, and it had a huge effect on her self-esteem. But a lot of people have questioned this affair because there really has never been any proof to prove that this happened or if it didn't happen. Pamela said that the night he had an affair, Greg had told her that he was going to be going out with a friend and grabbing a few drinks, and that he stayed at his friend's house. And Pamela said what actually happened was he went out to get a couple drinks and he met another woman, and he ended up staying with her at her house. And like I said, there's no proof on whether or not this did or did not happen, and a lot of people have their suspicions about it. However, this is what Pamela says happened. So let's talk about May 1st, 1990. So on this particular night, Pamela had a board meeting for the school that she worked at, and Greg was at their house. At about 10 o'clock p.m. that night, Pamela got home from her board meeting when she walked in the door of her home and found Greg lying on the floor, dead. Now, right when Pamela saw this, she started running out to the neighbors' houses and banging on their doors and telling them to call 911. And after doing that is when police did arrive on the scene. And when police walked into the home, they were able to see that Greg had been killed from a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. So he was basically killed execution style, and that was his cause of death. And right away when police started the investigation on Greg's murder, it was all one big question mark. No one understood why a guy who seemed to have everything going for him and his entire life ahead of him would fall victim to a murder. So let's talk about the crime scene, which was Greg and Pamela's home. Now, when police arrived on the scene and walked into the apartment the night of Greg's murder, they noticed that the house looked like it had been completely ransacked. Drawers had been opened, random items were lying on the floor, and it was random things. It was like CDs were thrown all across the floor, pillowcases had been ripped open, and the fluff or the stuffing, I don't even know what's inside pillowcases, but whatever is inside of them was just thrown recklessly everywhere. And they lived in a 2-story home, so the upstairs and the downstairs was the same thing. Both were completely ransacked and just looked like there had been a robbery. But there were two things that were left that really stood out to authorities, and the two things that were left behind were Greg's wallet as well as his gold wedding band. Now, you would think if you're going in to rob someone, you want to take the most valuable things. Why not take the wallet and the gold wedding band? It's it just didn't really make sense to authorities why those two items would be left. There's also no sign of a forced entry into the home, and they didn't live in a bad neighborhood. They didn't live in a bad part of town. They lived in an area with a pretty low crime rate, and police even came forward after Greg's murder and said that it was incredibly unusual for a robbery to include a firearm in the town that they lived in. It rarely ever happened. So because of all of those factors, this case did get a decent amount of media coverage, and Pamela wasn't necessarily hiding from that either. 6 days after Greg's murder, Pamela went out and did her first TV interview with a local television station. Pamela said that the reason she did the TV interview is because she wanted people to know who Greg really was, what type of person he was. And for this TV interview, Pamela had perfect hair and makeup. She had a nice outfit on. She had her dog sitting with her. She really did play it up for the camera. And there's two ways that people have looked at this TV interview. Some people take it as Pamela was asking the public to bring in any information that they had about Greg's murder, and other people took it as, why in the world are you going on TV 6 days after your husband was murdered in perfect hair and makeup to talk about him as a person? Pamela defended doing this by saying that she was being pressured to do the interview because the journalist told her that he was going to run a story that he had heard about Greg having a gambling problem and owing people money, and that's what led to his murder, so that's the story that they were going to run. And Pamela said that she felt the need to defend Greg. Now, the journalist says that's entirely false, and that he never pressured Pamela into talking about anything. So I'm interested to see where you guys lie on that spectrum. So about 6 weeks after Greg's murder, it was June 10th, 1990, and there was a man who walked into the police station, and he walked in holding a gun. Now, when he walked into the police station with this gun, he went up to one of the officers at the station and told them, "This is my gun, and I think it was used in the Greg Smart murder case." Now, weirdly enough, this wasn't the Derry police station, which is where Greg and Pamela lived. This was the Seabrook police station, which is about 40 miles away from the Derry Police Department. According to this man, he said that he hadn't used his gun in a while and was going to retrieve it for whatever reason, and when he saw it, he noticed that the gun had looked recently clean, and that was bizarre to him because he knew he hadn't cleaned it. Not only that, this man's teenage son's friend, this friend's name is Ralph Welch. Ralph had told this man's son that the gun may have been used to murder Greg Smart. So this was a complete bombshell in this case, because up until this point, police were going in circles trying to figure out what in the world happened to Greg Smart, and now they have this man who's saying, this is my gun, and I think it was used in this murder case. So the next thing authorities did is they obviously took the gun from the man and took the bullets inside of the gun to see if they were a match to the ones that were found in Greg Smart's head. And it was a perfect match. Police had the murder weapon, which again was a huge breaking point in this case. So that same day, on June 10th, 1990, police decided that they want to talk to Ralph Welch. So they brought him into the station for some questions, and Ralph held nothing back. Ralph Welch told police that he knew who killed Greg Smart. He said 3 teenage boys were responsible for Greg's murder. Those boys' names are Billy Flynn, Patrick Randall, and Vance Latimer Jr. These were 3 high school boys, and each one of them had a job that night. According to Ralph, he said that Vance waited in the car while Billy and Patrick broke into the house and attacked Greg. He said that Greg did try to escape and make a run for it, but both of the boys held him back, and Patrick held Greg's head while Billy shot him. Ralph said that they made a mess in the house to make it look like there was a burglary. So now that police had this alleged play-by-play of what had happened the night of Greg's murder, they were curious about a motive. What made these 3 high schoolers target Greg Smart and murder him? It made absolutely no sense until they started looking into it a little bit more. Ralph Welch informed authorities that the 3 boys had told him that Pamela Smart said that she would pay each boy $500 to murder her husband, Greg. So this was the bombshell in this case. Everyone was absolutely shocked that Pamela was being brought into this, but police needed to do some more investigating, and they began to uncover some pretty bizarre behavior from Pamela. So 6 days after Greg's murder, when Pamela did her TV interview, she said some interesting things on that interview. One of the things that she said is that Greg's murder, quote, couldn't have happened at a better time, end quote, which is a really, really strange thing to say about your husband's murder, but Pamela backed it up by saying that she meant it in the way that it was good that they had only been married for less than a year instead of them being married for 20 years, and for Pamela to have loved him so much more at that point. And you can let me know what you think about that. Authorities had also come forward and said that on that same TV interview, Pamela had said some information about the state of the home, the state of her home. But according to authorities, they say that some of the details that Pamela mentioned, she wouldn't be able to know unless she had something to do with it. And they say this because they say right when they got there, because where Greg was murdered was a crime scene, they blocked off her home and she was not allowed in it. Now, the flip side of this could be, she had some time before police got there, so if she went inside of the house and looked for things herself or checked to see if certain items were missing, then she would have had the time before authorities had gotten there to do that, and that's how she could know some of the details that she's talking about. But obviously, just the things that I just said to you, that does not convict Pamela of murder. Absolutely not. So police needed more information, and that is when they found the missing piece to this puzzle. So Billy, Patrick, and Vance, the three boys who were responsible for the murder of Greg Smart, were all high school students. But they weren't just any high school students. They were high school students who were attending the same high school that Pamela Smart worked at. And there was one boy in particular that Pamela was very connected to, and that was Billy Flynn. And remember, Billy was the one who actually pulled the trigger. So Billy and Pamela met at this program that Pamela had started at the school, and this program was called Project Esteem. And basically the whole premise of it was kids who were going through any struggles, whether that was, drug related or home related or whatever it was, they would come to this group and kind of build up their self-esteem together. And Billy was a part of this group, and Pamela was the one who ran the group. So this puts Billy and Pamela in the same room together and makes them have a lot of time to get to know one another. So then we have someone else who gets thrown into this mix, and that would be a girl named Cecilia Pierce. Cecilia Pierce was also a student at the same high school that all of the boys went to, and was also a part of the self-esteem project. And Cecilia was brought into this when an anonymous tip came in, when someone called the police department telling them that Pamela had orchestrated Greg's murder, and there is someone who knows all about it, and that someone is Cecilia Pierce. Cecilia was an intern for Pamela, and Cecilia said that her and Pamela were extremely close, and she looked up to her like a big sister. Police questioned Cecilia, and that's when she came clean about the affair that Billy and Pamela were having. She said that Pamela told Cecilia that she was in love with Billy, and Cecilia also walked in on Pamela and Billy having sex. So now police have Pamela, who is having an affair with Billy, and Billy is the one who murdered Greg Smart, Pamela's husband. So the circle is being completed here. And when Cecilia was questioned by police, she also told them that she had overheard the conversations that Billy and Pamela had been having leading up to Greg's murder, and told police that Pamela was the mastermind behind the whole thing, and she was the one who planned it, told Billy what to do, and had him do it, and threatened that if he didn't, the two of them were not going to be able to be together anymore. Okay, we're going to take a short break, but we will be right back with more of the Killer Instinct podcast. Alright, y'all, so I've talked to you guys about CauseBox before, and I need to tell you about it again because it is my favorite subscription that I have. So if you are unaware of what CauseBox is a quarterly, which is 4 times of a year, subscription box curated by women for women, and it is filled with all sorts of amazing products and brands that are ethical, sustainable, and have a positive mission to give back and help the world that we live in, which is always something I am totally about and will stand for every single day. So every CauseBox is a limited edition, and it comes with 6 to 8 full-size products. You can get everything from skincare and jewelry to homewares and accessories, and the last 4 boxes sold out within days, which, you guys, I totally believe it, because you get over $250 worth of products for only $50. Some of my favorite things that I got in my Cause box were my jade roller, because I'm always down for a little at-home skincare. They came with the cutest little duffel bag, a bento box, portfolio clutch, and so many other fun things. And every single Cause box also comes with a magazine that tells the story and the mission behind each product that is in the box. So it all has a meaning, and I love that. Something that's really fun about Cause box is every time you get it, it's like you're giving yourself a surprise. You don't know what products are going to be in the box until you open it. And that's the difference. Every time you online shop for yourself or get anything for yourself, you know what you're getting. But with Cause box, it's like you're giving yourself a surprise, you're giving yourself a present. And I'd get this for myself, I'd get this for my mom, my sister, my friends. It really is my new favorite subscription, and I tell everyone about it. So the best part of this is that, of course, I got you guys an exclusive discount. So you guys are going to go to www.causebox.com/killerinstinct and use the code killerinstinct to get your first box for 30% off, which, if you break it down, you can get your Cause box that is valued for over $250 for less than $39 and free shipping. Go check out Cause box right now. I can tell you firsthand, you are going to love it, and I can't wait to see what you guys get inside yours as well. Alright, y'all, so I don't know about you, but when 2020 began and when the new year started, I sat with myself. And I sat with myself because I really wanted to take time to reflect. I wanted to reflect on my life and what I liked and what I didn't like, things I wanted to change, where my happiness lied, what was interfering with me being happy with certain things, what was interfering with me trying to achieve some of my goals that I've had for so long. And that is when I discovered BetterHelp. Now, if you don't know what BetterHelp is a website that will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. You can connect in a safe and private online environment, so it's convenient for you, and you can start communicating in under 24 hours. And this isn't like self-help. No, this is professional counseling. You can send a message to your counselor any time of the day, and you will get a timely and thoughtful response. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And this is all without ever having to leave the comfort of your own home, without ever having to sit in an uncomfortable and awkward waiting room. I know a lot of people in my life personally who have always avoided getting professional help, even when they're intrigued by the idea, or if they're not and they're completely turned off by it because they don't want to, go and sit in an uncomfortable waiting room, and they don't want to have the anxiety of sitting there and feeling like they need to confess all of their deepest and darkest secrets to someone. And for them, it's easier to just sit in the convenience and the comfortability of their own home. And for those people, I have presented them with BetterHelp, and they have really been loving it. BetterHelp also has a wide range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. They have licensed professional counselors who are specialized in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, LGBT matters, grief, and self-esteem. Anything you share is always confidential, it's convenient, it's professional, and it's affordable. I want you guys to have access to this, and I want you to start living a better and happier life today. Killer Instinct listeners get 10% off your first month with the discount code INSTINCT. So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/instinct. All you have to do is simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you will love. That's betterhelp.com/instinct.
Hey, we're Ben, Henry, and Marcus, hosts of The Last Podcast on the Left. Our show's dedicated to uncovering hilariously horrifying stuff like alleged Illuminati conspiracies, satanic doomsday cults, and, of course, unfounded claims of alien contact.
And now, The Last Podcast on the Left is exclusively on Spotify, and we want you to join us.
That is, if you want to. Yeah, obviously we'd never force anyone to just blindly join us.
No way, just because we're super into urban legends and cults who do creepy things like chant join us doesn't mean we are a creepy cult and matching linens, fashionably running around trying to get innocent people to join us.
Absolutely not, because that'd be crazy.
But if you like stories about doomsday cults that do exactly that and more, then please join us
on Spotify. Visit spotify.com/lastpodcast to listen free.
Support for this podcast comes from NerdWallet. NerdWallet has provides helpful tools and tips for all things personal finance. Because when it comes to finances, no one nerds out like NerdWallet. Are you wondering if now's a good time to start investing? Or if you should refinance your house? When you have those kinds of questions, trust the experts at NerdWallet. They're real nerds who make even the most complicated money questions simple to understand. Plus, their calculators and side-by-side comparisons will help you make sense of your options. For all your money questions, turn to the nerds at nerdwallet.com.
Support for this podcast comes from CDW and Dell Technologies. At CDW, we get that migrating your business to a hyper-converged infrastructure is challenging.
Like me switching to decaf. Gotta do it, don't want to do it, but gotta do it.
Whoa, slow down, friend. CDW's experts can help you simplify the transition from legacy to hyper-converged infrastructure with Dell EMC solutions that offer speed and agility.
Do it, do it. Have you done it? Is it done yet? Why isn't it done yet?
IT orchestration by CDW. People who get it. Find out more at cdw.com/Dell EMC.
Alright, you guys, welcome back. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this prior, but all three of these boys were 16 years old. That's why I'm calling them boys, because they were 16. And while at 16 years old, you certainly do know right from wrong, you also are very heavily persuaded in certain ways, but at the same time, when it's something as big as murder, we're going to get into all of that later, but I just wanted to bring up that fact so you guys have a clear picture of the type of person that we're talking about. So, once Cecilia told the authorities all of this information, they then had her help them get a little bit more information. They wanted as much information as they could get on this, and authorities actually wired Cecilia and had her go into Pamela's office at school to see if she could get any information out of her. That way they would have an audio recording of it. So Cecilia walks in to Pamela's office and starts having a conversation with her, basically saying that she had been called in by police to answer questions and told Pamela that the police really think that she had something to do with this and that she was the mastermind behind all of this. And this is when Pamela doesn't deny it, but she actually tells Cecilia that she needs to lie to authorities, because if she tells the truth, she will be arrested for accessory to murder, and if she tells the truth, not only will she be sending all of the boys to jail, she will also be sending Pamela to jail for the rest of her life. So that conversation was extremely telling, because it's not Pamela sitting there being like, you know, I didn't do it. Why would they think that? I can't believe they think that. Like, I would never ever do that. She's actually telling Cecilia to lie to the authorities. That way she can save herself, Pamela, and the boys. So even though this tape wasn't Pamela saying, I made the boys kill my husband, the wire tape was enough for police to arrest Pamela Smart on August 1st, 1990 for the murder of Greg Smart. All three boys, Vance, Billy, and Patrick, were also arrested, and I do want to say that there was one more boy arrested in this, and his name is Raymond Fowler. And the reason I'm waiting until now to bring him up is a couple reasons. One being that he has very minimal significance in the research portion that's done on this case. His name is barely ever mentioned, and that was because, according to all the rest of the boys, Raymond wasn't aware that they were actually going to murder Greg Smart. He wasn't really aware that the murder was going to happen. He wasn't in on any of it. It was kind of like a wrong place at the wrong time type of situation. But because he was there and he was in the car, he was arrested as well. But when it came to Pamela's arrest, everything was based off of circumstantial evidence, and along with that, none of the boys were talking. They kept their mouths shut, and the reason they did that is because they thought that because they were teenagers, they would be released by the time that they were 18. So they were 16 years old thinking that they were going to be released by the time they were 18, but that was until the prosecutors told all three of them that they were going to be tried as adults instead of juveniles, and they could be looking at a lifetime prison sentence. And once the boys were told this, they all pleaded guilty with hopes that their sentence would be lighter and with the hopes that they would be able to get out of prison one day, and then they started talking. According to Vance, who was the one that was in the car, Vance told police that Billy had told him that Pamela and Greg couldn't get a divorce because Pamela would be left with nothing, and that Greg was very abusive towards Pamela, and that Billy and Pamela would never be able to be together with Greg being alive. Vance said that one day him and Billy walked into Pamela's office at school, and she was on the phone with Greg in a screaming, fighting argument, and Pamela put the call on speaker, and when they hung up the phone, she looked at Billy and said, "Now you see why I have to have it done." Billy also said that Pamela talked about her plan to murder Greg every single day. So things at this point are not looking good for Pamela, and this is when we get to the trial. The trial that was going to prove if Pamela was either innocent or guilty.